We are in luck, Swamy'S here too.
With the permission of the chair, I would like to speak in English because I know so many languages that I can't choose which one to speak on. My Sanskrit is not as perfect as yours, it requires much more improvement. I could speak in Chinese. The Chinese have a saying, Tian Pu Pa, Ti Pu Pa, Jo Pa, Yang Wei Zi Hui Shou Jung Go Pa, which means don't be afraid of the heavens. Don't be afraid of the devil, but do be afraid of the foreigner who can speak Chinese. Because it's such a tough language that if any foreigner learns Chinese, there must be some ulterior motive. That has been the view. First of all, I'm very happy that volunteers of the VHS, Virat Hindustan Sangam, of which I am the president. We have now, in a short period of 3 years, emerged in many countries, in almost all the states of India. We are having the National Convention in Rishikesh on November 18th and 19th. And it's a association of highly qualified people in other fields like science and arts and so on, but who are committed to the concept of Hindu unity. And none of our conferences is paid for by the organization. Each member, as a delegate fee, pays enough to cover the expenses. So everyone is on his own feet. And that's precisely what we want to do, and not have people dependent on organization, but the organization dependent on its members. I'm also would like to congratulate the Samskriti Bharati because I have a witness to people who know nothing about Sanskrit suddenly assemble for a 10-day course of the Samskriti Bharati and begin to speak the language within the 10 days. Reading and writing comes with a more extensive, intensive course. But I've seen vegetable vendors in Coimbatore speaking to me in Sanskrit. It's a great experiment. They don't teach Sanskrit except, as they say, a mother would teach a child. Because you can't ask what is the English equivalent of any word. Because they will tell you when a mother teaches a child, they don't give a French equivalent to the word. They teach the child word by word. And that's the way they do it. And it's a very successful approach. And even in a state like Tamil Nadu, where there's been a history of hatred generated since the British times to oppose Sanskrit, there is now a great deal of an undercurrent of people learning Sanskrit through Sanskrit Bharati, and if you are going to build anything here in the United States, it's necessary. The reason it is necessary is that the NASA has discovered that one of the most suitable language for artificial intelligence and storing knowledge in computers is Sanskrit, and they have published it. They have published it in the Journal of Artificial Intelligence by an author called Rick Briggs, and it's spreading now. Sanskrit is spreading. I was surprised to see from Google search engine that there is a school, very well-known school in London called St. John's School. There they have made reciting of Sanskrit shlokas compulsory for children from 5 to the age of 11. And the principal explains that it is not so much to learn the language, but that reciting Sanskrit shlokas accurately generates vibrations in the body and faster development of the brain. Those who speak Sanskrit, those who recite these Sanskrit shlokas are brighter students than others. Germany is now there's a wildfire for learning Sanskrit. So it's only in India we regard Sanskrit as a communal language, and anyone advocating is as a Hindu fanatic. But Sanskrit's revival is inevitable, so let us start before the revival is completed and be part of the revival process. Today, the topic is Hindu unity through Sanskrit revival. Now I have to start with definition and then ask the question why. Hindu unity is one which has to be defined, and the other which has to be defined is what do you mean by Sanskrit revival? Sanskrit is not a dead language in India. There's at least one village I know in Karnataka which speaks, where all the people speak only Sanskrit in that village. I think what is called Mattur, yes. So there are Sanskrit newspapers in Uttar Pradesh. There's people listen to Sanskrit broadcasts of Doordarshan. It's not a dead language. It never was a dead language. But attempt was made by the British to make it a dead language. They didn't completely succeed. But its revival means, I would say, more than revival, it's the renaissance that it will bring about in all languages. Because all languages of India have a heavy, large proportion of Sanskrit words. Tamil, which is considered a distinct language, is of course a very old language and almost considered parallel in development to Sanskrit. That has, according to my counting of the dictionary produced by the Madras University of English to Tamil and Tamil to English dictionary, I counted which of those words I can recognize as Sanskrit words. And after going through it, I found 42% of the words in the dictionary which they claim to be Tamil is actually Sanskrit. And once I remember having a debate with a hot discussion with Mr. Karunanidhi, who said that Tamil has nothing to do with Sanskrit. Then I said, then why is your name Karunanidhi? It's a Sanskrit word. And the DMK calls its election symbol, the rising sun election symbol, as Udayan Suryan. Now, to my knowledge, that is also Sanskrit. And election symbol they call as Chinnam. And Chin is Sanskrit for symbol. So, therefore, this mythology that Sanskrit is a dead language, Sanskrit is a language which has no use now. It should not be, time should not be wasted. That all has been gradually disproved. And Sanskrit is a language which has capability of each word becoming into 20 words. So if you say Vidhi, you can create Vidhan, Vidhayak. You will not find many languages where you can create from one word all the other connected words that are necessary. It's a highly scientific language, and the script Devanagari, which is not Hindi. I mean, in South India they will say, if you write in Devanagari the signboards, they'll say, oh, this is Hindi. It's not Hindi, it's Devanagari. Devanagari is used by Marathi, Devanagari is used by Nepali, Devanagari is used by Hindi, of course, and it's also used by Sanskrit. So originally it's a development with Sanskrit, and it's part of the Brahmi evolution. And the principles are the same. You take a Tamil alphabet, K, and you want to say ki, you just put a matra on it. The same thing in the Devanagari script also. And let me tell you that the Constitution of India, which very often all the liberals and the secular people quote, Article 351 and Article 340. Article 340 says that Hindi as an official language shall be written in the script of Devanagari. And that's a constitutionally directed principle. Second, 351 says Hindi shall use primarily Sanskrit words and not Urdu words or any other word, nor certainly English as it is. So rather than say, because Jawaharlal Nehru in the Constituent Assembly opposed the bringing of Sanskrit as the official language, therefore they accommodated him by finding this indirect route that Hindi should be increasingly in words Sanskritized. And this Sanskritization process will continue, and ultimately Hindi itself will become Sanskrit. Pali became Sanskrit the same way. After the victory in debates of Shankaracharya, Adi Shankara, the Pali was retained, but the words began to be increasingly that used were Sanskrit, and slowly in 50 years Pali became Sanskrit. So we can also convert Hindi slowly over a period of time into Sanskrit. So Sanskrit evolution can be side by side teaching Sanskrit, and Sanskrit can easily be learned by the way the methodology used by Sanskrit Bharati. So let me then say that we for revival of Sanskrit, we should form groups which on Sunday or on one particular day at a lunch should speak only Sanskrit amongst themselves. This process I learned in the case of the Chinese, teaching of Chinese at Harvard University. We had our lunch table on one particular day of the week, and we talked nothing but Chinese, and slowly it became very fast. The same principle is adopted, that you learn Sanskrit from your teacher, but make it a point to have a one day reserved for a particular period of couple of hours to speak nothing but Sanskrit. Two is that you need Sanskrit for reciting shlokas. There is no other language, it is the language of the gods, and all our Vedas and Shruti and Smriti literature or scriptures, they are all in Sanskrit. So Sanskrit, to connect you with our heritage, is required for that. And then the words which you, instead of English, if you want to use a word in your own language, Sanskrit practically has an equivalent for every word. And through the principle of Sandhi, many new words can also be created. So this is another great necessity for it. But most of all, I would say that since there was a determined plan of the imperialists, the British imperialists, to impose Sanskrit on India, to remove Sanskrit from India and replace it with English, and particularly with Macaulay's clearly stated objective in Parliament. Therefore, over a period of time, we have to deliberately decide and get it done, bring Sanskrit back as the language of communication between one state and another, between scholars in technical areas, in the judiciary, and over a period of time this can be achieved and there should be a determination. We intend to do that. It's going to, I think the trends are clear. They find hardly any resistance. And like most things which became popular after they became popular in the West, like yoga, it used to be sneered at in the 50s. People who thought it's just some contortion which is being passed off as science. But now, since Hollywood actresses are doing yoga, so in India also people think it's fashionable to do yoga. So, therefore, as Sanskrit is increasingly used in West, in artificial intelligence, in science, etc., Sanskrit words are borrowed, and then this gives you the access to scientific literature in Sanskrit. Now, there is recently discovered an ancient document called Vimana Shastra, and it is in very high-falutin Sanskrit, so I wasn't able to read, but I got someone to read it, and I only asked one question. Please tell me that if there was a Vimana in the ancient days, then what fuel did it use? How did it fly? On what fuel did it fly? And I was surprised to see that the Vimana Shastra had identified mercury as the fuel. And I asked an aerospace engineer this question, can mercury ever be a fuel? He said, well, so far it has never been to his knowledge, but he was of the view that 1 drop of mercury has more energy, propulsion energy, than 10 barrels of oil. And therefore, in the future, like uranium suddenly became discovered as a great producer of electricity, and, from very small parts of the uranium. The same way, in the future, mercury could well, in fact, become a fuel. Now, this was discovered centuries ago by us. This knowledge is there, and this has to be retrieved. So, first of all, I would say definitionally that Sanskrit revival means you do it by conversation. You make it possible for you to practice it one day in a week for 1 hour or 2 hours at a particular sitting where 5-6 people sit down and converse what they have learnt in Sanskrit. 2, you start using Sanskrit words freely. Like today we use a lot of English words in Hindi. And if you look at, if you see Hollywood films, I don't know whether they're speaking Hindi or English, which is more, but using English words has become fashionable. Why, for example, I'm not able to understand why our children are calling a father and mother as mummy and daddy. I was very surprised, even in slum areas, I've seen children refer to mother as mummy, and of course it sometimes reminds me of what mummy is in Egypt, but the child doesn't know that. So these unnecessary baggage or unnecessary intrusion must be got rid of by bringing in the use of Sanskrit words. And third is that we must ensure that gradually all of us use our increasing knowledge of Sanskrit into the learning of shlokas, reciting the Bhagavad Gita, etc. This is the practical way. Of course, who can be a better expert to tell you than Rajiv Malhotra, who I'm telling you, he's a pioneer of a kind which comes once in a while, once in 1,000 years or something. What I most like about Rajiv Malhotra is he's able to speak in the same diction and language in English of all the haters of Hindus and defeats them in English itself. It's very easy to be dismissive of Indian scholars. Well, they're all half-baked. But Rajiv Malhotra footnotes it, he quotes sources, he takes their argument first and then shoots it down. And he's written a whole book on Sanskrit. And I'm sure that, whatever briefly I've said, he would give you much deeper sense of it. The second thing is Hindu unity. Why, first of all, what is Hindu unity? Just Hindus collecting together? Is Kumbh Mela Hindu unity? You know, 1 crore Hindus collect there. Nobody invites them. Nobody gives airfare concessions to come to Kumbh Mela, like they give for Hajj, but they don't give it for Kumbh Mela. So they collect themselves, nobody tells them what the date is, they find out. And I have found from talking to police authorities that there's hardly any criminal activity in such a gathering of nobody loses their belongings or some misbehavior takes place. So there that consciousness, that Hindu consciousness is latent. They go, of course, but they go there to pray that they must get their daughter married or get a promotion in office, not in the fundamental sense of Hindu unity. For Hindu unity, you need 5 things. And those 5 things will lead to a genuine Hindu unity for the country. We have to have Hindu unity because, first of all, Hindu disunity has been created, so we have to undo that. And that disunity has benefited a lot of people who have very bad designs on India. So we must now find out how to bring the unity. These divisions that are there, very, very often they have to be explained properly. Lord Krishna has said in Bhagavad Gita that Varna is based on gunas. It's got nothing to do with birth. You may be born in any family and you may end up as a Maharishi. And that is how Vishwamitra, born in a Kshatriya house, became the Rishi of Rishis. Even the gods were afraid of him. Vyasa's mother was a fisherwoman. He wrote the Mahabharata. Valmiki was a Dalit and he became a Maharishi. After an initial period of criminal activity, he completely transformed, became Maharishi, and he wrote the Ramayana. Kalidasa was a Manavasi. He was cutting trees, branches of trees in the forest when he was adopted, when he was married off to a princess by the priestly class who didn't like the arrogance of the princess, and she educated him to become a great poet. So we have many examples of that. We have also know that Ravan was a Brahmin. For a long time Karunanidhi didn't know that, so he used to celebrate Ravan Leela. Now he is not doing it because I explained to him. But Ravan was killed by a Kshatriya. Nobody makes this into a caste war, saying how can a Kshatriya kill a Brahmin? Of course, Rama respected the tradition that those who have attained the status of a Brahmin by their sheer knowledge, and Ravan was a very knowledgeable about Samaveda. So after killing him, Rama came to Rameshwaram and then did Prashchit Puja, for this purpose, just to maintain the form that he is not against the institution. So I would say these are all divided India now on bogus basis, birth-based. This whole Varna system has become birth-based instead of a decentralization of power. You have to read the debate of Bhrigu and Bhardwaja to know that they were consciously decided that if you want a stable society, then there should be decentralization of power. And there were four different sources of power: learning or knowledge, weapons, wealth, and land. And that these should be distributed in such a way that nobody had more than one of this. That was the system on which the Subarna system was based. But unfortunately, it became rigid and became birth-based. So now we have to consciously develop a attitude that this is no more relevant. I don't think that the present Varna system can be rescued because all these categories have lost their meaning. I have met Brahmins who are working as director in Bata Shoe Company. That's not the job of a Brahmin. So therefore, it's got nothing to do with the original concept. So this birth-based concept we should accept as all as ours, as one. We are all one. And that is what the recent DNA studies in the Journal of Genetics in variety of places, published in variety of places such as Cambridge University, Mysore University, Houston University, all show that the DNA of the Indian is the same from whichever part you are in India. So this distinction in your mind that somehow we are in the south, so we are Dravidians, and they are in the north, therefore they are Aryan. These are totally bogus theories which has been imposed on us. The theory was that the whole of India was once ruled by Dravidians, and then the Aryans came from Europe, came through Khyber Pass, beat the Dravidians black and blue and drove them to the south. And this concept is still holding the roost. We're finding it very difficult to change textbooks because of the enormous resistance that we are facing. But of course, we will do it. There's no question of that. It has to be done. So Hindu unity means not coming together in one place. It means a conscious decision that we are all one people. And that conscious decision has been translated into action. And there was an unfortunate period when we created a new class called the scheduled caste, which were the untouchables earlier they were called. The Constitution has now outlawed it, as it declared as unconstitutional. And today we have to slowly see how this can be melted out, because it was never part of the Varna system. It came due to certain local circumstances and time circumstances. But the fact is that we have seen that there is nothing different in our cognitive abilities or any other types of intelligences in amongst ourselves. In the scheduled caste community, we produced an Ambedkar who went to Columbia and got a PhD in economics and wrote a very fine thesis when 1916. Then went to London and got a law degree. Came to India and became chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution and produced a first-class Constitution, or piloted a first-class Constitution. And he was from the scheduled caste community. And we had somebody like Jawaharlal Nehru, who was a Brahmin, allegedly. And he went to Cambridge and failed. That, by the way, is not surprising, because no member of the Nehru family has yet passed an exam. Only time somebody claimed there was Sonia Gandhi, but then I produced the letter from the University of Cambridge that there was no such student. She had to revise it and withdraw the statement from the Parliament's volume on Who's Who. So I would say that there is no distinction. It's a question of opportunity. So Hindu unity again should come in this view. Some people are very unhappy about the fact that we have reservations. Well, that was a cure that was thought of. As far as scheduled caste is concerned, let me say, don't forget history. 1932, the British, after successfully dividing the Muslims by giving them separate electorates, announced that they were going to give electorates to the scheduled caste also. And Gandhi went on a fast to death. And he had been there for 12, 14 days, I don't remember how many days he was on fast. And finally, Ambedkar, he announced that he has rejected this separate electorate system for the scheduled caste and informed the British of the same. And then Gandhi broke his fast. But after breaking the fast, Gandhi assured him that when we get independence, we will ensure that in Parliament and in other places, in government official posting and so on, we will reserve a portion of for scheduled castes. It was supposed to be for a fixed period, but it has got extended. But the fact is that because of Dr. Ambedkar's sacrifice at that time, he could have easily accepted the separate electorate system of the British, but he rejected it. And had he accepted it, we would have been in completely balkanized. We would never have been what we are today. So therefore, a certain moderation is required. Once it's been given, how to take it back. Obviously, the best way to defeat reservation is to create so many universities in the country that nobody is denied admission. So many jobs that nobody needs a reservation to get into a job. So these are alternative ways of doing it, and we should think on those lines. But the fact is that these things have a background, and we have to understand it's also part of building the Hindu unity, that we don't take it in such a way which is interpreted that is actually a secret way of resuming what they call, the enemies call, as the Brahmin domination of Hindu society. So the first and foremost thing is to recognize that we are one people. The second thing we have to recognize is that the history books of today are bogus and they have to be rewritten. All kinds of rubbish is being put into it, and we have to educate our people afresh. Now, I ask many places where when I go to universities to lecture, the students call me for a lecture and explain. I tell them that please explain one phenomenon. Islam conquered Persia, which was 100% Zoroastrian when they conquered it. Within 15 years, they were able to convert the whole of Persia into Islamic community. And it was not an ordinary, Zoroastrians was an accomplished civilization. But they were able to do it. Then Mesopotamia and Babylon, which was in the neighbors of Iran, they converted them to 100% Islam in 17 years. Now, of course, Mesopotamia and Babylon are combined as known as Iraq. Egypt was converted in 21 years. The Christians went to Europe and converted Europe into Christianity in 50 years. But in India, Islam ruled for 800 years and the Christians to the British ruled for 200 years, and still we are 800%, 80%. How was India an exception? And the ISIS also in its publication says that India is an unfinished chapter of Islam, because they say that we have not been able to convert them all to 100% Muslim. So this phenomenon is because of, if the correct history is written, you will find that every part of India was fighting against foreign rule. None of them accepted it. Whether it's Shivaji or who won and established Hindu Rashtra in a part of India, or it was Rana Pratap who showed utter bravery, or the Vijayanagara Empire. Vijayanagara Empire started from Karnataka, went all to the borders of Bengal, and lasted 300 years. But where is the reference to Vijayanagara Empire in our history books? Maybe one paragraph might be there that in South India there was Vijayanagara Empire. But look at Islam, the Mughal rule. Each Mughal king has got one chapter for them in all our history books. Akbar has got one, Jahangir has got one, Shah Jahan has got one, Aurangzeb has got one. Akbar to Aurangzeb is 150 years. But Vijayanagara lasted for 300 years. There's no. What about this Ahom dynasty in Assam? Twice the Mughals tried to cross across to Burma by defeating the Ahoms. Ahoms defeated them. What about the great sacrifice of Guru Gobind Singh or Guru Tegh Bahadur and his son Guru Gobind Singh, who broke the back of the Islam of Mughal rule? There's very little reference to him. So this history has to be written with giving proper perspective. Women warriors we produce, Rani Chennamma in Karnataka, Rani Jhansi in North India. So that hardly any coverage is given in our history books. So in order to develop proper mindset, we must have a new history text prepared, and that needs to be done it hasn't been done. There's I must say that we have been unable, we have not been smart enough to get around it, we have not been brutal enough to do it, but that doesn't mean we won't do it again. I'm sure that if there is sufficient Hindutva, to 2019 or elections also, we are going to win whether the economy is good or bad. Once the Hindus rise above their caste and regions and vote as Hindus for the renaissance of Hindus, then I don't think any party can challenge it. But that's not the issue. But the fact is that we need for developing this mindset. And this has to be done very systematically. So, third is, Sanskrit is a part of that. Hindu unity, Sanskrit is a part of that. Let me tell you that Hindu unity is something which, to say that is no more relevant in today is wrong. When the British created India and Pakistan, they had to do a legal maneuver because there was no Pakistan. So they had to create a legal entity called Pakistan. So they introduced in the House of Commons a separate bill, which was called the Indian Independence Act. And that bill, in the discussion, the Prime Minister and all the key ministers, when they spoke, they said, our aim is to create a Muslim-governed Pakistan and a Hindu-governed India. And that was on the basis of which partition took place. That is why Ambedkar said that let there be population exchange. But then the Indian Independence Act was passed on 19th July and Mountbatten announced that we are going to hand over power on August 15th. I think Mountbatten was probably afraid that if we delayed it much longer, Subhash Chandra Bose might come and then the British may have to run after that. So therefore, I don't know what the principle, it was supposed to be June 48, but he advanced it to August 15. So I am saying that this part, whether it's truncated or otherwise, India was always thought as a Hindu country. And I would say because of genetics, since Muslims and Hindus also in India have the same DNA, therefore you are either a Hindu or your ancestors are Hindus. And the day the Muslims accept this real fact, then I think Hindu-Muslims can function together as one family. So I will conclude by saying that Hindu unity is a mindset. And that mindset has many components in it. First, you must know your identity, which I say is either Hindu or your ancestors are Hindus. That's the correct thing. You can have a republican concept of Bharat, India that is Bharat. But in terms of ID, your identification, it is Hindu or your ancestors are Hindus. And similarly, this mindset will tell you in what form you should regard all the people who are in the country as your associates. Vivekananda very clearly said that the moment the word where a Hindu comes to you for help and he comes to you genuinely for help, then in your bodies a new emotion should rise and I must help him. That feeling, when it comes, then you are a true Hindu. This is what Vivekananda had said when he came back from Chicago and he stopped in Lahore to give a speech. In that occasion he said it. So this mindset is extremely crucial. If your mindset is still what the British have prepared it, no matter how strong we become, how many satellites we are able to launch, you will not be a great power. You will not be a great country. Just like a lion is well fed in a circus and 5 lions are put in one cage and one thin wiry ringmaster walks into the cage and starts ordering these lions around. Wake up, get up, go over sit on the bench, open your mouth. He'll put his head in the mouth of every one of them and the audience would cheer. When you ask the question why these lions don't bite him to pieces, it's because from cub stage, the lion has been brought up to obey, and he obeys. And this happens to human beings also. And I have personally experienced this in the case of Manmohan Singh. He's a good man. He's a good man. And since he's a good man, I always respected him. I knew him personally for long years. But somehow, sitting in the most powerful chair of India, the Prime Minister's chair, he couldn't say no to Miss Sonia Gandhi. And that is because Singh is a lion, but then if he's a circus lion, then he will concentrate. So I will conclude by saying that when you talk about Hindu unity, and for that Sanskrit is very important, because all languages have Sanskrit words. Tamil 42%, Kannada 65%, Malayalam 80%, Bengali 85%. Hindi, of course, has now increasing numbers, it's reached 90%. So all our languages have Sanskrit words. And the more Sanskrit words come in, the easier it is for me to learn all the languages. And therefore, Sanskrit is also a part of it. Correct understanding of the history is a part of it. A certain Virat attitude, that is, you will defend the Hinduism. Hindus, when you will not sit aside and ask somebody else to do it, but you will unite, and you will, this organic unity comes about a feeling that we are all one people. That is the way you can do, and for that Sanskrit is a foundation, because Sanskrit is able to convey meanings which other languages cannot convey for us, and consequently we have to base our Hindu unity, amongst many things, the foundation of Sanskrit. Thank you very much.